Okay, welcome back everyone. I'm really excited for this week's video. I have a special guest with me. This is my friend Esperanza Hobby. Say hi everyone to Esperanza. And I am really excited to talk with her today because she has a really great perspective on how to help other people make changes, which this month we've been talking about making changes for ourselves, making changes for our family, especially around health and nutrition. And Esperanza, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about, obviously, why I asked you to join me today. Tell us what your background is.
Um, Thank you, Danielle. I'm excited to be a part of this. Thanks for your invite. I am a marriage and family therapist, and I've been working for families for over a decade, helping them to get along better, to respect each other, and be happier.
Sounds awesome. I love what you do. I love that field. I think everyone should have a therapist, honestly, because I think it's such a powerful thing to have an outside perspective, which is exactly why I asked you to join me today, because it's one thing for me to share my experience or my opinion on this with those that will see this video, but it's another to have someone that has actually been working in this field. So I really appreciate you joining me. So when I first reached out to you, I was thinking, okay, we're going to talk about like couples and spouses, because honestly, a lot of what I see is women learning about plant-based nutrition in particular, and they get really excited, either for themselves or for their children, or sometimes for their husbands, because sometimes our partner is having health issues and we learn that plant-based nutrition could really help them. And so we get really excited. So that was my first thought, was how can we do that in a healthy way, like for a relationship? Because what I keep hearing from people that I meet about this is that it doesn't go very smoothly for most people when you come to your husband and say, honey, I found the solution to your problem. We're gonna go plant-based, and we're gonna reverse your heart disease, or we're gonna reverse diabetes for you. You're ready to go, and it doesn't go super well. So it seems like you have a pretty clear perspective on this, and you actually eat a plant-based diet yourself. So I would love to just hear your take on that, of like, why do you think that doesn't go super well at first?
Well, there are many reasons. One of the most universal one is that we have a lot of meaning and emotion tied to our diets. And so if you come to someone and say, so, you know, this thing that you love, that you've been eating your entire life, you can't have that anymore, but it's for your own good. That is going to immediately put people on the defensive.
Totally.
That, oh, I don't think I'm going to be into this. What is it you have to say?
Okay, so maybe for us to recognize right out of the gate that this is a sensitive topic
Yes.
to ask someone else to make changes to the way they eat, even if it's for a really good reason to completely reverse, a health issue. It's still a sensitive topic, you're saying.
Yes, and so to tell someone that you have found the change that they need to make is usually not a very effective approach to getting someone to change. I don't think anyone can look back and see that that was effective for them.
Yeah.
And so it's better to consider, well, what was it that motivated us to make a change, and try to a softer approach. And usually people require several exposures to something before they become interested and open to it.
Yeah.
There are some people who, I hear these stories where they'll say, oh, I saw this documentary, I read this book, and that was it for me. I went through my kitchen, I threw out everything, I made the change one day. And there are some people that take that approach to change, but not everyone is like that. And very often, people with different change styles are married to each other.
Totally.
And that clash.
Absolutely. I've shared my story several times, and maybe I'll put some links with this video of where I've shared it in depth, but that's very much my husband and I'm definitely like super excited and I go head first. And my husband was like, totally pulling the reins of like, that's cool, Danielle, but can we please take this a step at a time? Like, can we take this in stride and slowly? And I'm like, oh, okay, even though I wanted so badly to just clean out my cupboards. But I want to address that for a second, because what you just described there, I think, is actually a really common experience that I don't know, there's got to be some statistics out there. Someday there should be somebody doing a study about this, of how many people go plant-based or go vegan because of a documentary. You know, those are high impact change moments. But think of the things that led up to that. That person chose to watch that documentary because there was some interest, there was some buy-in already, don't you think, from that person?
Right.
And they're
Just being
looking for
open to
answers.
watching a documentary like that.
Totally. Because it's so easy. Like if you even have the least bit of resistance, it's like you wouldn't even watch the thing in the first place. And then for us to get excited about it and then expect to just like throw it on someone else, it's not very realistic, is it?
No, it just isn't. And in a partnership, when you're sharing a home and you're sharing so much key important decision making, there are some really strong emotional reactions that people can have when someone doesn't agree
Totally.
with something that they feel strongly about.
Totally.
And so what I would advise people is that if you present this to your partner and they aren't immediately on board, don't say to yourself, they're not open to this, they don't want to do it, they're never going to do it. Instead, think, they're not open to it today. That's a much more realistic perspective to take on something.
Yeah.
And people can become open to things. We can't bank on it.
Yeah.
But people change. People
Yeah.
become more comfortable with ideas.
Totally.
And if we take that approach of they're never going to, they're rejecting this, they don't believe what I'm saying, this isn't important to them, you can just see all of the tension and the concern and the fear and the resentment that could be generated by thinking that way. You won't get anywhere productive thinking that way about your partner.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I think there's another side to that coin too, in that moment of kind of initial rejection or no thank you, I'm not interested in that. I think we can go, oh, we failed, it's over, he's never going to listen. We can also go, okay, I'm just going to have to try harder. I'm going to do this without him. I'm going to force him. I'm going to make him see. You know, there can be kind of, like you said, change styles. I think, don't you think it plays into personality of like what that reaction is going to be? And that other side isn't going to serve them very well either, right? Of saying, well, I need to convince him, or I need to force him. So what would you say to those people that kind of automatically feel like adversarial about it? And again, that's a tension that's not healthy.
Right. I would say that it isn't possible to make someone care about something, and it isn't possible to make someone change. And so all attempts to do that are going to be fruitless anyway. But there will be outcomes that maybe you didn't intend and that you don't want.
Yeah.
And those will be impacts on the relationship.
Yeah. Sure.
For people who are really struggling against that, and I understand that the drive to want to get your spouse or your partner or a family member to make this change can be really powerful and difficult to resist, especially if you are worried about their health and maybe something that's actually a really serious health condition. That drive to get them to change can be very powerful and difficult to resist.
Yeah.
So what I would tell people to do if they're struggling with that is to just flip that situation around and say, well, what if this was reversed? And most of us have experienced people telling us that this is so unhealthy the way that you're eating, you're going to die on this diet, you're deficient in this, you're deficient in that, right? We don't like it. we tune out, we don't listen, and we start to see that person as not necessarily a safe person where this topic is concerned.
So we're taking, yeah, that's, I mean, isn't that the biggest, that's one of the biggest risks of trying to push this on other people, is you're actually compromising the trust and the authority, any authority that you had in that relationship, as far as them coming to you for help. I think that's really important to recognize. I love how that's a really useful tool right there, to just say, you know, stop for a minute, and rather than getting so lost in, but he has to, because he needs this, taking a step back and saying, okay, like you said, if the roles were reversed, how would I want him to approach me with this? How would I want him to navigate this with me?
Right. And would you want someone to sit you down with a pile of research articles and 8 hours of documentary watching and a stack of books to read over the next month? It's too much.
Yeah.
It's just too much. And maybe if they were to read and watch and discuss all of those things, they would be more motivated, but they have to go through their process of change.
Yes.
And you just get in the way if you try to push, and you run the risk, almost the certain risk, of hurting your relationship. And so why choose that? Why choose that outcome?
Yeah.
A relationship is more important than any one issue.
Totally.
So don't choose that for your marriage.
Thank you. I think that's hard to hear sometimes when we get so passionate or excited or even fearful, right? Scared that here's the answer, and if he would just swallow this pill, if he would just do this diet, then everything would be fine. But the cost can be too high. So I love that.
Most of us that made this change, we didn't make this change because we wanted to be angry and resentful all the time and have problems in our relationships. We did this to be healthier and happier.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so we should still be striving to be healthier and happier, regardless of how receptive people are to our change or the message that we're trying to convey.
Awesome. I love it. So when someone decides that this is something that they want to do, and the spouse is resistant or not interested, and for example, so for me, I talked to my husband about it at first, and he literally laughed in my face and left the room. Like it didn't become like a point of conflict. It was just like, he just dismissed it. And so
well, that's a wild idea. That's really funny, Danielle.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But I had so much buy-in because I had personal reasons of, you know, looking at my family history and saying, wow, I don't want to repeat that. I don't want to have heart disease like my grandparents. I don't want to have a stroke like my grandparents. And I really believed that nutrition could help me change that. So for me and for my kids, I was like all in. I was just so excited to have found something that I could control, because up to that point you believe that genetics, it's just a roll of the dice. We'll just see how you do. It's like, no, I have control over my health outcomes, which is so empowering. So I moved forward, and I went ahead and started making small changes for myself. And I started making little changes for my kids. And we just Blaze and I just navigated back and forth. So for me, that's what worked, of just like, still like him saying, no, I'm not interested, wasn't a, no, you can't do this. You know, I still felt like, well, I'm still going to do this for me. And then it became a point of, you know, I would share things that were going really well or that were exciting, or changes that I noticed in myself or in the kids. Our immune systems just really kicked up. So I was sharing with him that I was noticing we were getting better faster. And he started to show some interest, and he started to ask questions, and he started to actually have like an open dialogue with me about it. And so for us, that's what worked really well, was to kind of have this back and forth, and there wasn't pressure from me of saying, you've got to do this right now. And of course it was different. He didn't have a health issue at the time that I felt fearful about. Anyway, but that worked for us. So I don't know, is that kind of like a general rule? Is that something that you would say is a good practice for anyone that's kind of navigating this with a family?
Yes, I think that the example of the way you and your husband came along at different times and respecting each other is ideal. That you didn't try to push him and he didn't try to stop you,
Yeah.
but that it made it safe for him to experience it and see the benefits and come along on his own time.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of how we wish this would go for every family,
Sure.
every relationship.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then there's so many others that I feel bad for, because I'm like, I wish that that could be the happy ending for everyone. So like, we've been plant-based for 3.5 years now. He's pretty much all in. We have slightly different opinions on how exactly this looks. You know, he takes some liberties in some areas that I don't, and that's fine. But that was our journey, and that's not necessarily how it goes for other people. What would you say to someone that has tried what I did, of having an open dialogue, and they just continue to just be met with rejection and please leave me alone? How can that person move forward without resenting that person for just dismissing it continually? Like, I don't know. Do you have any ideas for that person that's still basically having to fly solo with no support from a spouse on this?
So I'd go back to this feeling of feeling like they rejected a part of you. When someone isn't interested in something that we have to share, there are many different ways that we can think about that and explain it to ourselves.
Yeah.
And if you find that you're feeling really resentful, it's difficult to give this like to a huge audience. I don't know everyone's situation, but I would say that maybe the way that you're explaining that to yourself isn't the best way.
Yeah.
When something happens, we can explain it in so many different ways, as to what it means and why someone did this and what their motive was.
Yeah.
And if you are feeling really resentful, maybe you're choosing the explanation that is most hurtful.
Mm.
And you could try a different explanation. The
Mm.
most hurtful explanation can't always be the true one. And I would say most of the time it isn't.
Mm.
And so maybe go back and look at, what are you telling yourself about their decision to not do this,
Mm.
that it is hurting you so much. Maybe it doesn't mean what you think it means.
I love that. I love that. So kind of being open to, could there be another explanation of why he's dismissing this? And having some compassion for that maybe it's another explanation that has nothing to do with you.
Right.
It has more to do
Don't
with
take
him.
it so personally. Don't take it so personally. Most things aren't meant that way.
Yeah, I love that. So being open to other stories is what my husband would call that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it's wise.
Yeah, I love that. Was there anything else you thought of that you felt like you could share today, kind of on this topic, that you want to make sure people kind of think of or are aware of? We've kind of talked about some of the pitfalls of wanting so badly to share this with other people. Are there other pitfalls that we haven't talked about that you feel like we need to address?
Something that I would love to touch on is that someone who has been unsuccessful in getting a spouse to make this change might be feeling like they aren't unified with their spouse because of this difference.
Yeah.
And I'd like to suggest that you can be very unified with your spouse in being different. That if you are really honoring the differences that you have and supporting each other in the differences, then you can actually feel closer, and it can be an expression of love.
Mm.
And you can do that in very simple, consistent ways. Like continue going to that restaurant that you both used to love eating at, even though he's going to order a steak and you're going to order a potato. Still go there, because that's something that's been meaningful for the two of you. If he loves spicy Cheetos, make sure you keep a bag in your pantry. Make that your mission to make sure that his favorite food is there, and continue to make that thing that they really love, and tell them, I'm doing this because I love you. It can be very unifying to respect these differences rather than resisting and trying to hold back the generosity.
Wow.
You don't have to do that. You
Wow.
can continue to be loving with these differences, and it can bring you closer together. So you don't have to feel like this means we aren't together. You can be.
I love that you spoke to that. I see this all the time, that I'm working with clients and they're not unified with their spouse. And I'm not a counselor, so I have to put walls up of my scope of practice as a health and wellness coach. But I can see it. I see that it is a point that's dividing them, and it hurts my heart and it makes me sad. So I love what you just shared there. And I think what you're saying about making it your mission to still to just say, okay, they're not seeing food the same way I am now, because we start to see food as this is either healing us or hurting us. And that's not how most of the world looks at food. And now you're choosing their perspective, which is, if she loves me, she would get me the Cheetos and make me the meal and help and let me get the steak without judgment, without shaming me, without holding back love or approval.
No element of stinginess at all.
So I guess I just want to highlight.
I'm fully embracing that this is what you want, and this is where you are right now. I fully honor where you are.
And don't you think that means twice as much love and acceptance to that person, because he now knows how you feel about food, and you're choosing to still see it the way he sees it, and you're choosing to express love in that way? That's powerful and so counterintuitive. And so, I mean, that takes a high level of attention to yourself and to your relationship. I just think that would be amazing. I can say that I have tested that in some ways in my marriage, because there are still things that he likes to eat or have in the house or order or whatever. And there were times that I would be really resistant, and I would kind of, give him the look of, why would you do that? And, in small ways, yes, shaming him for those choices he's making. And that wasn't getting me anywhere fast. And it wasn't changing his behavior either. So why am I doing that? So there have been times that I've really, just in the last year and a half, I've just said, you know what? You know what I know about food. You know how your body responds. So I'm just going to let you figure this out. And I did. I really tried to do what you're talking about there, of letting that go and letting him have his freedom and letting him make his choices without me shaming him about it. And I have actually seen him slowly but surely going on his own journey of, rather than doing it out of spite of me, he's actually now making different choices because he had the freedom to make the choice. And now he's experiencing the consequences of it, which is, I don't feel so good after I have X, Y, and Z. And so now he's making those decisions on his own terms for his own reasons, which is how we want it anyway. Because for me as a health and wellness coach, I know that lasting change comes from internal motivation, not external. So that's been really cool. So I guess I just share that with the listeners, that there is hope. Like if you give them space, you might be surprised with what they choose and what they learn along the way, and letting them do that, letting them have their own journey. You talked about that in the beginning, honoring their process, which can be hard, but I guess I'm just saying it's worth it.
Right. I totally agree. It's like whenever you feel like you're going to do something because you're afraid that they won't make the right choice, that's a time to hold back and say, I'm going to trust you to choose for yourself. And I really like that example of you recognizing that you were doing something that wasn't helping and had the potential to hurt, and that you're able to self-correct. And I would say to the people who maybe this has become a bone of contention in their relationship, that it isn't too late for you to fix this and to correct your approach. Instead, you can become more unified with your partner. And I would say that the best way to do this is to give a sincere apology and fully admit to what you were trying to do, or that apology won't mean anything. To say, yes, I was trying to do that, and it just meant this to me, and I wanted this, and I was trying to do that, and I apologize, and I'm not going to do that anymore, and just ask to start over. And most partners are going to be receptive to that. They don't want to be fighting with you.
Absolutely.
I'm sure they hate it just as much as you do. And so you can go and you can make this repair with them. You've got to be honest with yourself and with them, because they know what you're doing anyway.
Yeah.
It's not a secret. They know. And so just acknowledge it and commit to make that change. It's like, I'm going to stop doing that. Let's start over.
Awesome. I feel really good about this. Is there anything else that we're missing that you feel like really needs to be said? I feel like we've covered some really awesome points here. I think the people that are watching this video are going to have some really powerful things to think about, and like you said, to do, and conversations to have. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I think that feels good to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
This was fun to do.
Thank you. I'm so glad you joined me. I can tell that you have a very big heart and a lot of wisdom. And I think anyone that works with you is blessed. And I'm grateful that you shared that with us just a little bit today. If anyone wants to get in touch with Esperanza, you can definitely get in touch with me, and I can put you in contact with her. You're based in where? You're here in Utah.
Yeah, I'm in Utah Valley. I do sessions remotely. Right now, everyone's doing sessions remotely, so it works.
Okay. All right. Would that be all right if people wanted to talk to somebody that's sympathetic to plant-based nutrition and work some things out in their family? Is that something that you'd be open to?
Absolutely. I would love to help in any way that I can.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, I'll make sure that anyone that is looking for that will get in touch with me, and then I'll put them in touch with you. Thank you again so much. Those of you that are watching, thank you for joining us. I hope that you felt some hope here, and that there's multiple ways that this can be looked at. And sometimes the thing that needs to change is actually not our spouse, but it's us, and it's our approach, and it's the story that we're choosing to tell. It's the feelings that we're choosing to feel, and we can make little shifts there that could make a difference in not only our health, but these relationships that are so important. So thank you for joining us. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel or joined us in our private Facebook group, just search Healthy Living with Danielle Dinkelman, and we'd love to see you in either of those places. And we'll see you next week. Thank you so much.